Thank you all for being here today. I think that I know everybody in this room, so I don't need to introduce myself, but I would like to introduce Mike Peterson. So his first talk this morning is on science and design. A little background on Mike. He is the president of the Visionary Design Marketing. As a leading advertiser, director, and publisher of the esteemed shelter publications, House Beautiful and Country Living, Mike worked with both regional and national brand marketers and advertising agencies. As publisher at Lux magazine for nearly a decade, the Lux brand exploded both in popularity, brand recognition, and increased sales. In this capacity, Mike developed close relationships with luxury design firms, design centers, and interior designers in helping them grow their businesses. Mike's stellar resume includes leadership roles at some of the most established and beloved furniture brands in the nation. He served as president and CEO of LaBarge Furniture and as vice president corporate marketing for Masco's home furnishing division. Today, as founder of the Science and Design, Mike helps to educate designers on their ability to improve the health of their clients. Studies from Harvard, Johns Hopkins, the United Kingdom, and neuroscientists around the world are an integral part of Mike's efforts to help designers realize their value proposition goes beyond aesthetics to include health at home. The design industry is considered an alternative health resource by science, and designers need to realize their enhanced value proposition. So with that, I would like to bring Mike up and let him start his presentation. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And so, because we have a small group, let's keep this really friendly, intimate. If you have questions at any time during the talk, please just raise your hand. But I do want to start by telling you that you are an alternative health resource. That's not Mike saying this, okay? That's neuroscience. That's the big guys, Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, and all those guys. They recognize the interior design industry as an alternative health resource. Do you think of yourself that way is the question. So let's get started. For the last couple of years, I've been producing a series of science and design summits across the country and in Canada. And the response from interior designers has really been overwhelming and game-changing for me, my partner, Linda Kafka in Toronto, and for the attendees. This talk will be a brief glimpse into some of the content of those full-day seminars. And one of the things you're going to hear today that's going to run through the entire talk is that beauty, nature, and fine design improve health. When you create fine design, you're lowering heart rate, you're lowering blood pressure, you're generating GSR. Everybody knows what GSR is? No. GSR is galvanic skin response. It's a tool that neuroscience is using to measure arousal factors that they can now measure. What's important about this is to understand that our value as an industry goes so much further than just creating a pretty room. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let me start by pulling out 5 major revelations that need special attention. They're kind of like the headlines of this talk, and they are now facts, indisputable. The need for aesthetic experiences is hardwired in our DNA. Think of the ramifications of just that one sentence. Evolutionary inheritance, and we will be talking about evolution a lot in this talk. Evolutionary inheritance reminds us that we are today who we have been. We have a human need for faces and facial hierarchy. We now have software that predicts where the unconscious mind will be attracted. So think about things like curb appeal. Think about things like when you're walking into a room, what's the instantaneous and the first millisecond reaction that we have to that environment? And we are going to talk about just how important it is to start getting this message out and market the science and design. So question, why does Amazon's headquarters have Nest-like conference rooms hanging from the ceiling and a headquarters containing 390 different species of plant life? This is not a spaceship. Why did Apple spend $5 billion on their new 100% biophilic headquarters in Cupertino, California? Every workstation has access to natural sunlight and greenery. Why did Etsy in Brooklyn okay, feel the need to turn their Brooklyn headquarters 100% biophilic. The workstations that you see on the right are literally hanging cocoons. The country's #1 home furnishings retailer is driven by the subject neuroaesthetics. And lastly, why is Microsoft building conference rooms in treetops? Now, look, I could show you hundreds more examples of what's going on around the world. But the bigger question is this: what science do these industries and leaders know that motivate them to do this, to create these kinds of environments? More importantly, what do these industry leaders know that we might want to learn? And we're going to answer those questions today. Now, what's happening is that science has begun about 30 years ago to study us, the design industry. And the word for it is neuroaesthetics. And let me break the word down. Neuro being physiological and the brain. Aesthetics, of course, being beauty, nature, and design. And what's interesting is that science is so far ahead of our industry. They're 30 plus years ahead of us in understanding that we do indeed improve health, but we're not getting credit for it. We're not even thinking about it. We're giving it, you know, just a couple comments. Oh, when I walk in that room, I feel good. No. We can now measure the brain. We can now scan. We can now measure skin conductivity. We improve health. We're an alternative health resource. And we need to start internalizing that as an industry. We're leaving so much on the table. The value proposition for who we are is so different than what it may have been perceived 30 years ago. Now, one of the leaders in neuroaesthetics is a friend, and she's been one of our early speakers. She's the executive, Susan McSalmon. She's the executive director of the International Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins. We just interviewed her last week for her new book, Your Brain on Art. And if you like this subject, you ought to consider getting that book. And she says, the truth is that aesthetic experiences are hardwired in all of us. They are, here's that word, evolutionary imperatives, encoded in our DNA as an essential part of our humanity. And they are fundamental to our health, well-being, and learning. So think about this. The need for what we do in the design industry is hardwired in our DNA. We don't have a choice as people. We have to seek out aesthetics. It keeps us alive and has kept us alive for millions of years. Harry Malgrave is a renowned neuroscientist out of, University of Pennsylvania, more recently, Illinois Institute of Technology. And he says, beauty, like art, is a neurological activity, an urge for and feeling of pleasure, and associated with awe and wonder. Now, those are nice words, but let's pick this apart just a little bit. Neurological. The benefit we provide is not just emotional, but it's physical, okay? And being physical, it can now be measured, calculated, scanned, biomapped. Urge for, and these guys choose their words pretty carefully. And he says, urge for, meaning art and design are not an elective. They're not a passive interest. They're a compulsion. We have to seek it out. Now think of the impact this has on our role in helping our clients, actually our patients, achieve this satisfaction of aesthetic beauty. We've survived over the millennia because we ran towards beauty. Now, I want to expand on this evolutionary thing just for a minute. I've been working with Ann Sussman, who is a professor of cognitive architecture at Boston Architectural College. And she really gets it. She lives and breathes this. And she says, understanding that our brain is an artifact of 3.6 billion years of evolution frames the new direction for design and architecture. Think about that. What's really been eye-opening for me is that we are all in the middle of this incredible R&D experiment. Essentially, we are the sum, we're the aggregate of all who have been before us. And we are contributing to who we will be in the millions of years ahead. It's profound. And I hope it will make us all strive to be worthy ancestors. Now, what I've done is string together a few slides that will help paint this timeline picture and tell this story a little bit. And we'll end this little portion of the talk with the opportunity that we have. Here's where we were born, folks. This is where we lived 100,000 years ago. We didn't wake up to an iPhone alarm. We woke up only to the sounds of wind, nature, streams, the flutter of wings, and sheer aesthetic beauty. Shoeless, we could feel the moss beneath our feet. We could smell the pine. This is who we are. These were our daily expectations and assumptions. There were no steel girders, no brick walls, no computers. This is what shaped us and what our brains adapted to. Our views were distant. Think now, how often do we get to see further than even just across the street in our world we live in today? And we're going to learn a little later just how important views are and how important they are and encoded in our DNA. The brain evolved in a biocentric world, not a machine-regulated world. And of course, the famous savanna. This was our habitat, a place which nurtures. Do all of our built environments today nurture? Are they habitats, or are they a place to be? Everyone in this room has inherited what you just saw, okay? That's us. But the paradox is interesting because millions of years ago, we lived with the rabbits, the deer, the wolves, the plant life in the trees. And today we're considered the evolved species, right? But the difference today is that the deer and the rabbits are still living in their natural environment. We are not. Nigel Nicholson is a scholar in the UK, and he says, you can take the person out of the Stone Age, but you can't take the Stone Age out of the person. We are who we were. But here's the problem, and kind of like the rest of the story. This is where we live. Okay? Anything human-centric about this? What's human-centric about a bunch of boxes? For anybody living in Atlanta, I apologize showing Atlanta. Carl Sandburg, the famous poet, wrote in 1957, "We live in the time of the colossal upright oblong." A man of words couldn't find warm, supportive words to describe the environment we were building. The question is this: if aesthetic experiences are required as a result of our DNA and our evolutionary inheritance, what in the world have we done to ourselves over the last 100 years? Look at how unnatural the world is to our nature. Science tells us that the opposite of this visual, the opposite being aesthetics and beauty, is what heals. And I hope you see where I'm going with this. Look at the contrast. This is LA. I'm going to be in LA in 2 days and experience that wonderful environment. What we're trying to do with the science and design is give us a perspective on just how important we are, actually how important you are. I'm a marketing guy, so I don't create beauty and aesthetics. You really don't want me drawing anything, trust me. It's about the need our clients have that they don't even realize. And we have to know, we have to learn, internalize it, and share it with our clients. What we do, creating beauty and aesthetics, balances the world we have to live in today. It's actually an obligation on our part today to share this information. Now, as I pull this first portion of the talk together, I want to read a comment that Susan gave me a couple months ago as a summary for her talk. And she says, "Our brains and bodies are always sensing and interpreting the world around us. And we know that the design of spaces impacts our biology. The opportunity to use this knowledge to design and create spaces that support our health and well-being, that is the future of design. That is your future." One of the world's leading authorities in neuroaesthetics says the future of design is in creating spaces that heal. And by the way, when we talk about biophilia this afternoon, you'll see examples from around the world of how science is using nature to help heal patients. And it's not just science that's saying this, the medical industry is also well ahead of where we are. Look at this quote from this. Dr. Miller is the head of environmental medicine at the University of Texas, San Antonio. Architects and designers have a greater ability to improve public health than medical professionals. Let that sink in for a minute. I hope that spins your head. Okay, doctors, the people that we trust with our health are saying that we have a better ability to improve health than they do. It's an aha moment. It's a moment, take a picture of it and frame it and put it up on your conference room wall, because this is who we are. Look at the change in our value proposition when we begin to truly believe this and understand it and begin marketing it. And, you know, Dr. Douglas Wood of the Mayo Clinic talks about our industry as having patients as clients, because he says the future of medicine is in the home. Why? Because the home prevents and it cures. Now, notice, this is not your local chiropractor saying these things. We're talking about Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, University of Texas, University of Pennsylvania, institutions around the world are saying, come on, design industry, catch up. That's our opportunity. Are you positioning your brands this way? If not, why not? And by the way, this is worldwide. Here's an example out of Canada. The Medical Association in Canada in November of 2018 authorized doctors to begin prescribing trips to art galleries and museums instead of giving them a bottle of pills. Okay? Imagine, you have to go to an art gallery to feel better. So this whole study is also giving us a whole new language that we're going to need to be aware of over the months and years ahead. I'm going to give you a couple of words that you may know already, you may not. Environmental psychology. By the way, we're building a certification program that will be launched in October, and we actually have a terrific hour presentation on environmental psychology. And this is really an understanding of how the room, the space that we're in, our personal ecosystem impacts us every millisecond of every day. Think of the difference in how we feel when we're in a fully enclosed room, no windows, low ceiling, looking at a laptop, compared to how we feel when we're walking along the beach, letting the ocean tickle our toes. Totally different. Shinrin Yoku. If you haven't heard of this yet, it's headed our way. Translated, this is forest bathing, and it is now a medicine in Japan. Essentially, doctors are now prescribing time spent in the forest to heal their patients. And biophilia, and we'll do a whole hour on biophilia today at 2 o'clock. Essentially, biophilia is the theory of biophilia. It says that because we spent most of our evolutionary history in nature, we have an innate love of nature and natural settings. We are linked to nature cognitively, physically, and emotionally. We aren't just in nature, we are nature. Think about those early slides. So I'm going to dive a little bit into neuroaesthetics and some things that are kind of important because it'll tee up some of the rest of the slides. And again, understanding a little more about this will help us with the rest of this talk. And Eric Kandel is a Nobel Prize winner in physiology, and he states that 95% of our brain activity is beyond our conscious awareness. Let that sink in for a minute. All of our conscious thoughts and actions are unconscious first, all of them. The subliminal brain. Folks, we're skating through life. We could literally live an entire life without a conscious thought. We may have met a few people like that, but that's, which means first impressions, those first seconds of exposure to a new environment or image are critically important. I gave this talk to a major builder a couple of months ago, and all of a sudden it hit him, the impact of curb appeal. We've always talked about curb appeal. Builders have up to 3 seconds to attract the subliminal brain, and that's it. And they move on. Now, I want to show you how this first glance or this subliminal brain, unconscious mind thing works. I'm going to show you on the next slide 3 geometric shapes. Okay, I want you to look at them, and I'm going to ask you to be in touch with what you see in a millisecond of seeing these 3 geometric shapes. You ready? Did you have to think about it? What happened? That's your evolutionary inheritance kicking in. For years and years, millions of years, actually billions of years, we as a social species have been attracted to facial hierarchy. We see it in the front of cars when we see a car. So the question is our industry designing for the subliminal brain? Or do we overthink what we're doing? Now, I want to stay with facial hierarchy for a minute before we get into a little bit of technology, because it's really, really important. In his book, Don Ruggles, and if you haven't read the book, Beauty, Neuroscience, and Architecture, if you like this subject at all, you need to get the book. It's terrific. It's what actually started me on this path 8 years ago. And my partner and I are just passionate about getting this message across and out into the industry. 65% of the structure of our brain is dedicated to facial at birth, is dedicated to facial recognition, and it doesn't leave us. Even as adults, the majority of our brain is devoted to seeking out something that we can connect with socially, a face. All right? As a kid, when we're asked to, I'm going to show you a few examples. When we're asked to draw, in kindergarten, asked to draw the front of our house, what do we draw? We draw facial hierarchy. We see it in buildings. Okay? By the way, do you have to think about what you're looking at? No. As soon as I click the slide, automatically the image pops into your mind. You think this is how we might feel after having one too many the night before? And I have to tell you, I had a lot of fun picking these slides. But it proves the point. Here's home furnishings, interior design. This is so important, a neuroscientific development. Look at this. There's a very good reason why major brands choose facial connections to attract audiences and to make a connection. Starbucks could have used a bean. The Colonel could have used a chicken or a drumstick. Pringles could have used a chip, but no, they chose to connect with the marketplace through faces. And by the way, if there's any doubt in our minds whether this is important to us, look at the images we've chosen to convey emotions. Okay? All right. With that as a backdrop, let me go to some new technology that I think is really, really important for our industry. It's already used heavily in packaged goods and in website design. And I now have several of my designer clients beginning to use VAS software, VAS standing for Visual Attention Software. And it's software that predicts where the unconscious mind will be attracted. Now think about that. You run an image through the software, and the software will tell you where the mind will be attracted in that image. So I'm going to show you an image right now of a room, and I want you to try and connect with where you think your mind will be attracted immediately, and then we'll run it through the software. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, your conscious mind just kicked in. So give me an idea. I'm going to take a sip of water. Give me an idea of where you think your mind would be attracted. Say it again. Outside and where else? Okay. All right. Let's see if you're right. One of the measuring tools in visual attention software is called gaze sequencing. It can measure the first, second, third, fourth, fifth fixation on an image. And so this is telling us the first gaze went out the window to the edge of the chair against the water. The second was the hard edge at the footboard of the bed. The third was the color contrast, and then it went back outside again. Here's what it looks like with hot spotting. And the way to read this is that there's a 98% chance that that chair and the outside of the room will be seen in the first 3 seconds. 77% chance for the footboard, and so on. All right. Here's what it looks like from a heat map perspective. And by the way, if you like this and you think it can help you in your business, it's extremely inexpensive. It's like $49 a month to subscribe to visual attention software. Okay. I have, as I said, I have several of my designer clients now using this. They call it visual spell check. Okay, think of it that way. So you provide a rendering and you run it through the visual spell check, and it'll either confirm what you were hoping would happen or it doesn't. And remember I said that Restoration Hardware gets it? Do you think the front of this Restoration Hardware store will attract attention? What do you think? You know, I'm kind of setting you up on this one. You bet. They get it. Okay. Think about this. You get out of your car, you close the door, you start walking up towards the front of Restoration Hardware, and you immediately get excited before you walk in the door. I want to show you an example of how this can be used by an interior designer. In this case, it's a marketing effort. I built this ad for a client in Miami, Sarah Z Designs. And, you know, we liked it. You know, that's her project on the right, and those were the ingredients on the left. And we thought, hey, that looks like it works. We have a logo, we have a tagline. And we thought, okay, let's just be sure, and we'll run it through VAS. Well, you know what? When we ran it through VAS, we were pretty excited because we hit the logo, we hit the tagline, and we hit the name on the bottom of the ad. Everything worked. So we were getting kind of cocky, okay? And so we took the single page ad, and because she wanted to run a spread, a 2-page ad, we built a 2-page ad. We loved this. You know, we were all set to go to send it to the magazine for publishing. And I said at the last minute, I said, you know what? Just for the heck of it, let's run it through VAS. Uh-oh. This is why it's a visual spell check. The assumptions that all of us had in this case meant that the room on the right, which was actually her project, would not get attention. And remember, you're sitting there reading a magazine and you're flipping through the pages. You have a split second to stop the reader. And the same with walking into a room. So what attracts the mind's eye? What attracts the mind's eye is edges, intensity, color contrast, and faces. And so what we did was go back to some of the basics, and we said, let's build an ad based on what our subliminal brain, this is designing for the subliminal brain. We built an ad on the basis of these elements. And lo and behold, look at what happens. We put our headshot, 98% chance that the headshot will be seen in the first 3 seconds. And we picked up edges, we picked up color contrast, color intensity. The whole ad now works. All right. So look, what's important is that we take this information and not just sit at a seminar like this and go home and go back to business as normal. What's really important is that we need to find a way to get this message out into the consumer marketplace. Because again, we're leaving so much value on the table. The value proposition for interior design is so much greater than we're being given credit for. And we have to change that. That's why we're doing all these seminars and presentations all over the country to get this word out. This is what science knows. Let them help us, okay? So we're gonna talk about, let's talk about marketing the health benefits. Believe, we need to first understand, be educated in, and then believe in our ability to improve health. We lower heart rate, we lower blood pressure, and we create GSR, galvanic skin response. It's an arousal factor in our skin. We need to build a health and wellness community. So start associating with other health-driven organizations, other people that you can brand associate yourself with. Position yourself. Be the authority. I'll show you an example in a minute. Be the authority in your market, in our marketplaces. And don't wait 10 years and wake up and realize this is now firmly inside the industry and say to yourself, what happened? Don't do that. Be the early adopter. The early adopters own the marketplace. Now, I mentioned framing that quote before. Think about this. By framing that quote, you're not just putting the statement up on your wall, you're brand associating with the University of Texas or Johns Hopkins or the Mayo Clinic or other major institutions around the world. So all of a sudden, you can use their brand names to associate with and make more of an impression on your clients. Here's a designer right here in Statesville that attended one of our early summits in last year, Jenny Pippin. She loves this subject. After the first session, she actually came to 2 more science and design summits. They were exactly the same, but she wanted to go 3 different times. And she wanted to build her business based on the science and design. And so she started a blog and entitling it You Inspired Living. Now she's using the word you because one of the other things we mentioned in our marketing side of our company is that we as an industry always are using the wrong pronoun. Our websites are filled with we do this, I specialize in, our team does. Listen, it's like going to a party and talking to a guy for 15 minutes and all he does is talk about himself. You know, you want to get out of there. But if he says, well, how are you doing? Where did you go last summer for vacation? All of a sudden the relationship and communication is different and much more pleasant. So she's using You Inspired Living. And these are some of her blogs. I recommend, go to Jenny Pippin, Pippin, go to her website. And these are just some of the titles of her blogs. The mood boosting benefits of primary colors, natural daylighting, the science behind biophilic design to heal mind, body, and soul. She's not afraid, she's owning it. She has fully internalized the subject and she's differentiating herself in her marketplace. Here's Gabrielle Kozuk in Toronto. She named her company Mindwell Design. And it's hard to read, but she actually says that we've created the first neuroaesthetic luxury and wellness focused interior design firm in the greater Toronto area. She's owning it and she's an early adopter. Now, another firm that came to an early science and design summit is right here in North Carolina in Charlotte, Clark & Clark Interiors. They went through the same summit and they came to me afterwards and said, look, we get this. We're kind of doing a lot of this. You validated, we hear that a lot. You validated what we're already doing, but we don't know how to structure it. And so they came to me and my team and said, can you help us build a marketing program around this subject? Now they are biophilic specialists. So we focused a little more on biophilia, but let's take a look. This is a web page that we designed for them. So now their website, Clark & Clark Interiors, is loaded much, much more towards the science of how nature improves your health. And we developed an ad campaign for them as well, which I absolutely love. This is a 2-page ad. And you can see on the left, you see textures, you see fractal imagery, you see nature, and you see a room filled with the same. And the second part of the ad campaign is the one I like even more. Again, you have textures, you have greenery, you have Spanish moss, and you have them infused into the room on the right. By the way, the room on the right also has a terrific view out the window, which is an evolutionary inheritance. And people will be attracted to that as an ad because it makes them feel good. Prospect and Refuge is what it's called. And you're sitting safely in your room with a view out at the expanse of nature. And then, of course, we have this ad that was created in a similar fashion that I've already shown you. I hope you like this subject. I hope the subject is invigorating. If you do, I've already mentioned it, but please get this book. And no, I'm not getting a royalty on every book that's sold. Don is a friend of mine, and he speaks on this around the world. He's in the UK now, speaking on this, I think at Cambridge. And it's just a great, great read. And it's academic, but he writes in a friendly voice. We've all read a lot of academic books that are tough, okay, to get through. This is easy. You won't, it's almost like a page turner. You might not want to put it down because it really flows quite nicely. The other book I would recommend getting is Cognitive Architecture by Anne Sussman. Anne gets into a much deeper approach to the impact of the built environment, our personal ecosystem. She gets into things like thigmotaxis. There's a word everybody knows, right? If I pointed to you, what does thigmotaxis mean? Okay. Thigmotaxis, I'd never heard of it either a year ago. We're all wall huggers. That's what thigmotaxis is. Think about walking into a restaurant. There's nobody in the restaurant. You have your pick of a table. Do you go sit in the middle of the restaurant? No. We go to a wall so that we can be protected. This is another example of Prospect and Refuge, so that our backs are protected and we have a view out into the room. I just thought of this. Who was the Western guy? He was a sharpshooter and played poker, and he always sat with his back to the wall. In the days of Wyatt Earp. Come on, who was he? Okay, later. Anyway, I got to remember that for the next time I give this. So look, you should also know that based on all of our summits last year, we talked to about 500 different designers. After that, they said, you have to develop a certification course on the science and design. And so Linda Kafka and I, Linda's a superstar in the world of design in Canada. She and I are currently working with 25 different professors from University of Pennsylvania, from University of Athens, talking about our evolutionary inheritance. Valencia, talking about European biophilia. We're working with Terrapin Bright Green right now. Bill Browning and Katie Ryan are developing a couple of classes for us. We're working with Hobie Wedler. And if you've never heard Hobie speak, he's fascinating. He's a specialist in senses, all of the other senses, not visual. Hobie was born blind. And so he has an acute understanding of the other primary four senses. And so his class, by the way, is going to be interactive. To attend his class, you must bring a bottle of Cabernet. Okay? And I'll let it hang out there and just with wonderment. But it's going to be launched in October, at October Furniture Market. And we're proudly going to launch it with Phillips Collection and Hooker Furnishings, and Benjamin Moore is a partner, Stone Peak Ceramics is a partner, and 3M, Vast Technology is a partner. So we're very excited about it. It's a big deal, and we're hoping, we're dreaming, just like Steve Jobs did. We're going to change this industry for the better. Let me leave you with this thought from Harry Malgrave again. I believe we're on the verge of a revolution in the way that we approach design. It will no longer be guided by the speculative constructs of borrowed theory. Don't you love the way these guys talk? But rather by a more basic understanding of the human organism and its existential engagement with the built environment. This is the epiphany that needs to take place. Are we hearing a wake-up call? I hope so. When's the last time you sat through a design presentation with an image like this? What's interesting is that our friends in science, neuroscience, in the medical industry probably know our needs and see our opportunity better than we do right now. Let's change that. Let's catch up. And by the way, let's change the last sentence and let it be that we are the epiphany that needs to take place. Ta-da, that's it. Thank you, folks. Questions, thoughts, comments, anything? Since you asked so many questions during the presentation, yes?
So I wanted to ask, if you drill down to the manufacturer level, what would your recommendations be? And we sell to your design products, right? We sell jobs. We're not making, those kind of imagery. What would your recommendations be if you're developing a product?
The first thing, having been a manufacturer also in the past, the first thing I would say is stop thinking like a manufacturer. Okay, stop thinking about straight lines and right angles. Stop thinking about efficiency. The natural world is fundamentally inefficient. It's efficient, but not as organized as it should be. Stop thinking like a manufacturer. I think the first thing you would do is, honestly, and again, I'm happy to do this. I would love to come in and talk to your product team and just go through this. That's what we're going to be doing with Hooker and June, because they are a partner. They want to get ahead of this. And so I would say to anybody here, anybody if there's an opportunity to share this information with other people, we're glad to do it. We're on a mission, and we believe it. And I mean, Jane's been following me on this for 7 years now. And saying, when are you doing your certification program? And so it's here, but you have to learn the science first, and then think, how do I apply the science to the creation of a piece of furniture? And actually think of the piece of furniture not as a hunk of wood, but something that's going to have an impact on our biology, our environment. Every millisecond has an impact on our human biology. So what will that piece of furniture do? In the second session today at 2 o'clock, we're going to show you furniture that is generally more biophilically designed. Lots of soft movement, curves. There are no straight lines or right angles in nature. And so we've just created this nicely efficient world that is punishing psychologically. Okay, Jane, you have a question?
Yeah. So I think about all this kind of higher learning and the terminology, and I think about, having the consumer understand, like, if we're neuroaesthetics, it's not a designer's website, that's a big concept to understand. So do you work with designers and training them to adopt this? Are there other phrases and things that, that like anybody coming in doesn't have to go Google a ton of stuff?
Well, what a great question. In basics of marketing are that you always speak in the language of the other person. Okay, so we in our industry need to know the value of neuroaesthetics. Okay, but trying to convince Mrs. Smith that she needs to be more neuroaesthetically based in her home doesn't make sense. It's just not going to go that far. But us having the knowledge of how to use the value and the content of that word to improve Mrs. Smith's home is what's valuable. And so there are certain words that you don't want to talk about paper taxes. You don't want to do that. You don't want to necessarily talk about neuroaesthetics, but you need to know about both of them. So when you're designing a room, where you go to the chair, we all love to have the wall behind us. Well, that's going to influence how we design that room. Okay, I don't know whether that answers the question or not. I think you have to know the knowledge, but speak in the language of your client.
I mean, just relate that to it's like, I can see there's like sometimes I think that there's a relationship between class structure and design, and that really student can afford it benefits most. But I feel like in this sort of knowledge and what's coming out there, hopefully is desired to not just Apple and Etsy and all these, but to share this possibility and help with lowering,
We're it's dead on. We're there. Anything, I'll say, I just said it, I'll say it again. Anything we can do to get this word out, to spread the word, we're willing to do it. I'm literally flying to Anaheim for the Pacific Coast Builders Conference tomorrow to do a 1-hour presentation and then flying back home. So it whether it makes sense or not. We'll do it. We'll go where people want to learn about this. Okay? Other questions? Are you waving or are you asking a question?
I'm waiting too, but I was just gonna say, we've been following you for a long time as well, or I've been following you for a long time as well, and we use timeless. So that's what we kind of have gone through. It took me a long time to kind of process all this and why does the client care? And I think our tagline became bespoke, sustainable, timeless. And we get to that timeless through the use of neuroaesthetics, so that this is a biological connection to your natural instincts to this setting. So when you design with us, you're not going to hate it in a year or two, or 10. You're going to reupholster the sofa. You're not going to change the shape of the sofa, which is also a great partner with sustainability.
So go to the websites we talked about, go to Trio Design, also in Denver, Angela Harris. Go to Jenny, as I said, Jenny Beckman is already doing it, and they all have a different way of communicating it. But learn it and then make it your own. If you want help, give me a call, 561-628-8825. Feel like a radio commercial. All right, any other questions? Thanks, Walter.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you.